The words hit me like a physical blow. She's become such a burden, Carol. I swear I can't wait until we can just, you know. My daughter-in-law Jessica's voice drifted through the hallway, sharp and dismissive. I stood frozen outside the guest bathroom, my hand still on the doorknob, feeling my heart crack wide open. A burden. After everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, I was just a burden. My name is Chantel Morrison, and I'm 62 years old. For most of my life, I thought I understood what family meant. I grew up in a small house in Georgia where Sunday dinners weren't optional and neighbors knew your name. My mama taught me that family takes care of family, no questions asked. That's the world I tried to build for my son Marcus. I met my husband David when I was just 23, fresh out of nursing school. He was a construction foreman with calloused hands and the kindest smile I'd ever seen. We got married 6 months later in my mama's backyard, with string lights hanging from the oak trees, and my aunt's potato salad feeding half the neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Marcus came along 2 years later, and Lord, that boy was my whole world. David worked long hours, sometimes 60-hour weeks, to give us a good life. I worked night shifts at the hospital, so I could be home during the day with Marcus. We weren't rich, but we were happy. I remember teaching Marcus to ride his bike in our driveway, the smell of David's barbecue wafting through our Atlanta neighborhood every 4th of July. The sound of Marcus's laughter echoing through our little 3-bedroom house. We did everything for that boy. Ballet recitals. Well, no, Marcus played basketball, but we were at every single game, cheering louder than anyone else. I packed his lunches with little notes tucked inside. David taught him how to change a tire, how to treat people with respect, how to be a man of his word. When Marcus brought Jessica home 8 years ago, I opened my arms wide. She was pretty, ambitious, worked in marketing. She seemed to make my son happy, and that was enough for me. I threw them an engagement party in our backyard, spent weeks making decorations by hand. At their wedding, I cried happy tears, thinking about how our family was growing. Then everything changed 5 years ago. David had a heart attack at a construction site. He was only 59. 1 minute he was there, solid and steady as he'd always been, and the next, he was gone. The grief nearly swallowed me whole. Marcus was devastated. They'd been so close. Jessica was supportive. I'll give her that. She helped plan the funeral, held my hand during the service. After David died, the house felt too empty, too full of ghosts. Marcus and Jessica suggested I sell it and move into the guest house on their property, a cute little converted garage apartment with a kitchenette and bathroom. "Mum, we want you close," Marcus had said, his eyes still red from crying. "Dad would want us to stick together. Plus, we could really use your help with the kids." Emma was 2 then, and Jessica was pregnant with Tyler. I thought it was perfect. I could be useful, be near my grandbabies, and not be alone with my grief. I sold the house David and I had filled with 35 years of memories, split the money between savings and some property investments David had always told me to hold on to, and moved into their guest house. For the first few years, it felt like a blessing. I'd wake up and hear my grandchildren's laughter through the window. I helped with morning routines, packed Emma's preschool lunch, watched Tyler while Jessica worked from home. I cooked dinners most nights, my mama's recipes that Marcus had grown up loving. Pot roast on Sundays, fried chicken on Wednesdays, peach cobbler for desserts. Jessica seemed grateful back then. "Chantel, I don't know what we'd do without you," she'd say, giving me quick hugs before rushing off to meetings. Marcus would kiss my cheek and say, "You're the best, Mom." "Dad would be so proud of how you're helping us." I felt needed. I felt loved. I felt like I was honoring David's memory by taking care of our family. But slowly, like fog creeping in, things began to change. It started small, little comments that felt like paper cuts. "You're here again," Jessica said one morning when I came over to help with breakfast. Again, as if I didn't live 20 feet away. as if I wasn't supposed to be there. The kids need routine, Jessica. I always help on school mornings, I replied, keeping my voice light. She gave me a tight smile. I know, it's just, sometimes Marcus and I need space to figure out our own routine, you know? I brushed it off. New mothers get overwhelmed, I told myself. She's stressed with work. But the comments continued. Did you rearrange my kitchen? When I'd simply put away dishes. The kids are getting too dependent on you, when Emma asked for me instead of Jessica at bedtime. We're not babies, Chantel, when I offered to help with grocery shopping. Then came the whispers. I'd walk into a room and Jessica and Marcus would stop talking abruptly, their faces guilty. Once I came in from the guest house to find them huddled over papers at the kitchen table. The moment they heard the door, Jessica swept everything into a folder. Just work stuff, she said quickly. Too quickly. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. Hey, Mom. My son, who'd never been able to lie to me, couldn't look at his own mother. I started noticing other things. Jessica would roll her eyes when I offered to help with anything. She'd make plans for the kids without telling me, then act annoyed when I'd already prepared lunch or planned an activity. We're doing things our way now, Chantel, she'd say, her voice dripping with barely concealed irritation. The worst part? Marcus said nothing. My son, the boy I'd raised to stand up for what was right, just stood there silently, while his wife slowly froze me out of the family I'd helped build. I tried talking to him once, catching him alone in the garage. Marcus, honey, is everything okay? Jessica seems upset with me. He wouldn't look at me directly. Mum, you're imagining things. Jessica's just stressed. Work's been crazy. Baby, I know you. Something's wrong. He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my stomach drop. Guilt, but also something harder. Resentment, maybe. Mom, maybe you just need to give us more space. Let us be our own family. Our own family. As if I wasn't family anymore. I went back to my guest house that night and cried into David's old pillow that still somehow smelled like him. What do? I whispered to the empty room. What would you tell me to do? But David wasn't there to answer. 2 weeks later, I overheard the phone call that changed everything. I'd come over to the main house to return a casserole dish. The front door was unlocked. It always was during the day. I stepped inside quietly, not wanting to disturb anyone. That's when I heard Jessica's voice coming from the home office, sharp and clear. She's become such a burden, Carol. I swear I can't wait until we can just, you know. I froze in the hallway, my heart hammering. I know, Jessica continued. Marcus feels guilty, but honestly, we've done our part. She's suffocating us. The kids are starting to prefer her over me, and I'm their mother. It's not healthy. There was a pause while her friend spoke. We've been looking into places. Nice ones, you know, where she'd be taken care of. And honestly, Carol, with that insurance money from her husband, she can afford it. She doesn't need to be here, leeching off us. Leeching. The word felt like poison. Marcus is coming around to the idea. He just needs to grow a spine and tell her. Anyway, I've got to go pick up Tyler. Talk soon. I stood there in that hallway for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. My legs felt like water. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. The casserole dish nearly slipped from my trembling hands. A burden, suffocating, leeching, after everything. After raising Marcus alone for months at a time while David worked, after selling my home to be close to them, after spending my days caring for their children, cooking their meals, washing their clothes, after giving up my independence to help them build their lives. This was how my daughter-in-law saw me. And Marcus, my son, was coming around to the idea of putting me away somewhere. I set the casserole dish quietly on the hallway table and walked back to my guest house. I didn't cry this time. I was beyond crying. I just sat on my small couch, staring at the wall, trying to understand how I'd become the villain in a story where I'd only tried to love my family. That night at dinner, Because yes, I still made dinner. Like a fool, I watched them carefully. Jessica was all smiles, complimenting my cooking. "This roast is delicious, Chantel." "You're so talented." Lies, sweet, poisonous lies. Marcus avoided my gaze, pushed food around his plate. He knew something was wrong. Maybe he could feel my eyes on him, searching for the little boy who used to tell me everything. "Grandma, can we make cookies tomorrow?" Emma asked, her sweet face covered in gravy. "We'll see, baby," I said softly. "Actually," Jessica interjected, her voice sugar-sweet, "Grandma might be busy tomorrow." "Right, Chantel." Our eyes met across the table, hers challenging, mine knowing. "Right," I said, "I might be busy." After dinner, I went back to my guest house and did something I hadn't done in years. I went through my important papers, really went through them. Bank statements, insurance documents, the property deeds David had left me. Everything was there, organized the way I'd kept it since David died, except something felt off. Some papers were slightly out of order. A folder wasn't quite where I'd left it. I pulled out my bank statements and felt my blood run cold. Withdrawals I didn't recognize. Transfers to accounts I'd never opened. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $300 there, but getting larger over the past 6 months. Thousands of dollars, gone. My hand shook as I grabbed my laptop and logged into my bank account. More transfers, more missing money. Nearly $15,000 had vanished from my savings over the past year. With shaking fingers, I dug deeper into the folder where I kept David's life insurance papers and my property documents. That's when I found them. Photocopies of forms I'd never seen before. Applications to nursing facilities in the area. 3 different places, all toured within the last 2 months. And there, at the bottom of one form, was a signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. But I'd never signed anything. I'd never agreed to tour facilities. I'd never authorized anyone to access my accounts. Someone had forged my signature, and I knew exactly who. My chest felt tight, but not from grief this time. From rage. Pure, hot rage that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in 5 years. Not since David died and I'd swallowed every ounce of pain to be strong for Marcus. I spent that entire night awake, documenting everything. I took photos of the forged signatures, screenshots of the unauthorized transfers, notes about every conversation I could remember. By sunrise, I had a file folder thick with evidence. At 7 a.m., I heard Marcus's car start. He left early for work on Thursdays. Jessica would be getting the kids ready for school. This was my moment. I walked across the lawn to the main house, my folder clutched against my chest like armor. I didn't knock. I used my key and walked straight into the kitchen where Jessica stood making Emma's lunch. "We need to talk," I said. Jessica jumped, pressing a hand to her chest. "God, Chantel, you scared me." "What's wrong? When were you going to tell me?" I set the folder on the kitchen counter with a heavy thud. Her eyes flicked to the folder, then back to my face. "Tell you what? About the nursing homes. About the money you've been stealing from my accounts. About how I'm such a burden that you can't wait to get rid of me." The color drained from her face. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something that looked like shame, but it was quickly replaced by defiance. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't." My voice came out harder than I'd ever spoken to her. "Don't you dare lie to me." "I heard you on the phone. I found the papers. I know about the money, Jessica. I know everything." She set down the butter knife she'd been holding, her jaw tightening. "You were snooping. I was living in my own space. These are my documents, my accounts, my life." "Mommy," Emma appeared in the doorway, her little face worried. "Why is Grandma yelling?" Jessica's expression immediately softened as she turned to her daughter. "It's okay, sweetheart. Grandma and I are just having a grown-up conversation. Go brush your teeth, okay?" Emma hesitated, looking between us, then slowly walked away. The moment she was gone, Jessica's face hardened again. You want to talk about this? Fine, let's talk. You're suffocating us, Chantel. Every single day you're here, hovering, taking over. The kids come to you for everything instead of me. Do you know how that feels? To be replaced in your own home by your mother-in-law. I was helping. You asked me to help, 5 years ago, when Emma was a baby. Things changed, Chantel. We don't need you the same way anymore, but you won't back off. You won't give us space to be our own family. So your solution is to steal from me? To forge my signature? To put me away like I'm some old piece of furniture you're done with? Jessica's eyes flashed. We were trying to do what's best for everyone. You're getting older, Chantel. What happens when you can't take care of yourself? We're planning ahead. With my money? Without my knowledge or consent? That's called financial abuse, Jessica. That's called elder abuse. Don't be dramatic. Where's Marcus? I demanded. Does he know you've been stealing from me, or just that you want to put me in a home? She didn't answer, but her silence told me everything. Marcus knew. Maybe not about the money, but he knew about the rest. He'd agreed to it. My son had agreed to throw me away. I want Marcus here. Now, call him. He's at work. Then he can leave work. Call him, Jessica, or I call the police. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't. Try me. For the first time, Jessica looked genuinely afraid. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. I heard his voice through the speaker, confused. Jess? What's wrong? I just got to the office. You need to come home. Now. Your mother found... She knows about everything. There was a long pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Jessica and I stood in that kitchen in silence, the air between us crackling with tension. I heard Emma and Tyler playing upstairs, their innocent laughter a painful contrast to the destruction happening around them. When Marcus finally walked through the door, his face was pale, his eyes hollow. He looked at me, then at Jessica, then back at me. Mum, How could you? My voice broke on the words. After everything, Marcus. After I raised you, sacrificed for you, loved you. After I gave up my home to be close to you. How could you do this to me? It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Tell me why I found nursing home applications with my forged signature. Tell me why thousands of dollars are missing from my accounts. Marcus's eyes snapped to Jessica. What is she talking about? What money? Jessica's face went red. Marcus, I can explain. You told me she'd agreed to tour those facilities. You said she was on board with the idea. She would never have agreed. You know that. I was trying to help us. By stealing from my mother. Watching them turn on each other should have felt satisfying, but it just felt hollow. This was my family. This was what we'd become. I don't care whose idea it was, I said quietly. Both of them stopped arguing and looked at me. I'm leaving. Tonight, I'm going to stay with Dorothy while I figure out what to do next. And Jessica, you will repay every single dollar you took from me, or I will press charges. Do you understand? Mom, please. Marcus stepped toward me, his hand outstretched. Let's just talk about this. We can fix this. I stepped back, and the hurt that flashed across his face almost broke my resolve. Almost. Fix this? Marcus, your wife has been stealing from me. You were planning to put me in a home without my consent. You let her call me a burden, a leech. What exactly is there to fix? I never wanted it to go this far. We just needed some space, and Jessica said, I repeated bitterly, when did you stop thinking for yourself, baby? When did you stop being the man your father raised you to be? His eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. Fair? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You want to talk about fair? I gave up everything to be here for you, for your children. I thought I was helping. I thought I was wanted. You are wanted, he said weakly. No. I was useful. There's a difference. I picked up my folder from the counter. I'll be back tomorrow morning to pack my things. I expect both of you to stay out of my way. Grandma, Emma's small voice came from the stairway. She stood there in her school uniform, tears streaming down her face. Where are you going? My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I knelt down, and she ran into my arms. Oh, sweet girl. Are you leaving because of me? Did I do something bad? No, baby. You could never do anything to make me leave you. Grandma needs to stay somewhere else for a little while. But why? She was sobbing now, and Tyler had appeared behind her, his thumb in his mouth, looking confused and scared. I looked up at Marcus and Jessica over Emma's head. Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and we need time to figure things out. Jessica had the decency to look ashamed as she watched her daughter cry. Marcus was openly weeping. Can I visit you? Emma asked. Of course you can. Anytime you want. I held both my grandbabies for a long moment, memorizing the feel of them in my arms, before I gently pulled away and walked out of that house. Dorothy Hutchins had been my best friend since nursing school, over 40 years ago. She lived 20 minutes away in a cozy townhouse with a guest room she'd told me 100 times was mine whenever I needed it. When I called her that morning, sobbing so hard I could barely speak, she just said, "Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you." For the next 3 days, I stayed in her guest room and cried. I cried for the family I thought I had. I cried for David, wishing desperately that he was there to help me figure this out. I cried for the years I'd wasted believing I was building something beautiful. Dorothy brought me tea, held me while I sobbed, and didn't push me to talk until I was ready. On the 4th day, she sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Enough grieving. Now we get mad, and then we get even. I don't want revenge, Dorothy." "I'm not talking about revenge, honey. I'm talking about justice. That girl stole from you, she committed fraud, and your son let her. He's my son, and you're his mother. The mother who deserves respect and protection, not theft and abandonment." She handed me a business card. "My nephew Marcus, yes, same name, different person, is a lawyer. He specializes in elder law. He'll see you this afternoon." I didn't want to go. The thought of airing my family's dirty laundry to a stranger made me sick, but Dorothy was right. I couldn't just let this go. Attorney Marcus Wilson was a kind man in his 40s, with warm eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I showed him everything. The forged signatures, the bank statements, the evidence of unauthorized withdrawals. He was quiet for a long time, studying the documents. Finally, he looked up at me. "Mrs. Morrison, what they've done is serious. This is financial exploitation of an elderly person, forgery, and potentially fraud. You could press criminal charges. I don't want my son in jail. Even after what he's done, he's still my son." The lawyer nodded slowly. "I understand, but you need to protect yourself. At minimum, we need to send them a formal demand letter for repayment of the stolen funds. We should also report the forged signatures to prevent any further misuse. And I'd recommend freezing your accounts and opening new ones they can't access." Over the next week, I did exactly that. New bank accounts, new credit cards, passwords changed on everything. I felt like I was erasing my own family from my life, one security measure at a time. The demand letter was sent. Jessica had 30 days to repay $14,847.23, or I would pursue legal action. Marcus called me 17 times. I didn't answer. Jessica sent text messages that ranged from apologetic, "I'm so sorry, I never meant to hurt you," to hostile, "You're tearing this family apart over money." I didn't respond to any of them. Emma called from Jessica's phone one evening, crying, "Grandma, please come home. I miss you so much." That call almost broke me, but Dorothy held my hand and reminded me, "You can love them and still protect yourself." I told Emma I loved her, that I'd see her soon, and that none of this was her fault. Then I hung up before I could change my mind. 2 weeks after I left, Dorothy and I went back to Marcus and Jessica's house to collect my belongings from the guest house. They'd agreed to be gone during the move, which was both a relief and somehow worse. I packed up 5 years of my life in silence, each item a memory I wasn't sure I wanted to keep. The kids' drawings on my fridge, the photos of family dinners, the coffee mug Marcus had given me that said, "World's Best Mom." All of it felt like lies now. We'd just loaded the last box into Dorothy's car when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello. Is this Chantel Morrison?" A woman's voice, official sounding. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Piedmont Hospital. I'm calling about your son, Marcus Morrison. He's listed as your emergency contact, but we can't reach him, and you're his secondary contact." My blood ran cold. "What happened?" "There's been an accident. Your daughter-in-law, Jessica, was brought in about an hour ago. She's in serious condition." The world seemed to tilt. "What kind of accident?" "A car accident. She's stable, but she's sustained significant injuries. We really need to reach her husband. The children are here with a neighbor, and I'll be right there." I hung up and looked at Dorothy, my hands shaking. "Jessica's been in an accident. She's at Piedmont." Dorothy didn't hesitate. "Get in." "I'm driving." The whole way to the hospital, my mind raced. I was angry at Jessica, furious even, but I didn't want her hurt. I didn't want my grandbabies to lose their mother. And Marcus. Where was Marcus? We found Emma and Tyler in the emergency waiting room with Mrs. Chen, their elderly neighbor. Both children were terrified, clinging to each other. The moment Emma saw me, she broke free and ran into my arms. "Grandma, Mommy was in an accident. There was a big crash and she won't wake up, and Daddy's not answering his phone, and I'm so scared." I held her tight, my anger momentarily forgotten in the face of her terror. "It's okay, baby. Grandma's here. Everything's going to be okay." Tyler wrapped himself around my leg, crying silently. Mrs. Chen looked relieved to see me. "Oh, Chantel, thank God. I tried calling Marcus, but it goes straight to voicemail. The hospital called me because I'm on their emergency list for the kids." "What happened?" "Jessica was driving to the grocery store. A truck ran a red light and hit her driver's side. The paramedics said she's lucky to be alive. I felt sick. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the theft and the cruel words, I didn't want this. Nobody deserved this. Mrs. Chen, can you watch the kids for just a few more minutes while I find out what's happening?" She nodded, and I approached the nurse's station. After explaining who I was, they let me speak with the doctor. "Mrs. Morrison has multiple fractures," the doctor explained. "Her left leg is badly broken. She has 3 cracked ribs and significant bruising. She also has a concussion. She's going to need surgery on her leg, and then months of recovery and physical therapy." "Will she be okay?" "Physically, yes, with time. But she won't be able to walk without assistance for at least 3 months. She'll need round-the-clock care initially." Round-the-clock care. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who'd called me a burden would now need someone to care for her. I finally reached Marcus an hour later. His phone had died, and he'd been in a meeting with his phone off. The sound he made when I told him about Jessica haunted me, a broken, desperate sob. "I'm coming. I'm leaving right now. Oh God, Mom, the kids are with me, they're safe." "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, Mom. I'm so sorry. For everything. I'm so sorry." But sorry didn't fix what was broken between us. Marcus arrived at the hospital looking like he'd aged 10 years. He rushed past me to Jessica's room, and I heard him crying through the door. Dorothy stayed with me and the kids in the waiting room, keeping them distracted with snacks and quiet stories. When Marcus finally came out, his eyes were red and swollen. He looked at me helplessly. They said she needs surgery. And after that, months of care. "Mom, I don't know how I'm going to work, the kids, Jessica's recovery. I can't do this alone." The words hung in the air between us. I could see him struggling with whether to ask, the shame and desperation warring on his face. "Please," he finally whispered. "I know I have no right to ask. I know what we did was unforgivable. But please, Mom, I need you. The kids need you, even Jessica. She's going to need help, and I can't afford a full-time nurse." There it was. The same woman they'd wanted to throw away was now their only hope. I looked at my grandbabies, huddled together on the waiting room chairs, Emma holding Tyler's hand. I thought about Jessica lying in that hospital bed, broken and scared. I thought about Marcus, my son, who'd made terrible choices, but was still the little boy I'd rocked to sleep 1,000 times. And I thought about myself, about what I wanted, about what I deserved. "I need to think about it," I said finally. Marcus nodded, defeat written across his face. "I understand. I'll figure something out." But we both knew there was nothing to figure out. I was their only option. I went back to Dorothy's house that night and didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the voices in my head. David's voice, telling me family is everything. My mama's voice, reminding me that forgiveness is divine, but also my own voice asking, what about me? What about my dignity? My peace? By morning, I'd made my decision. I called the lawyer first. "I want to move forward with the repayment agreement, but I want it ironclad and legally binding. I also want something else." "What's that?" "I want them to sign a document acknowledging what they did. The theft, the forgery, all of it. Not for court, unless they fail to repay me, but for my records, for my protection." "I can draft that." Next, I called Marcus. "I'll help. But on my terms, and you're going to hear every single one of them before I agree to anything." We met at the hospital the next day. Jessica was out of surgery, groggy but awake. Marcus sat beside her bed, looking exhausted. I stood in the doorway with my folder, a different one this time, prepared by the lawyer. "You wanted my help," I said. "Here's how this is going to work." Marcus straightened up. Jessica turned her head slightly, wincing at the movement. Even bruised and broken, I could see the pride warring with desperation in her eyes. "First, Jessica will sign a payment plan, agreeing to repay every dollar stolen from me, $14,847.23, in monthly installments of $500 over the next 30 months. If you miss a single payment, I pursue legal charges. No exceptions." Jessica's jaw tightened, but she nodded slightly. "Second, you will both sign a document acknowledging the financial exploitation and forgery. This stays sealed unless you violate our agreement." "Mom, that's—" Marcus started. "Non-negotiable," I cut him off. "You want my help?" "These are my terms." He swallowed hard and nodded. "Third, I am not moving back into the guest house. I will stay temporarily in the main house to help with Jessica's immediate recovery and care for the children. But we're talking weeks, not months, and not permanently. After that, I'm getting my own place." "But Mom, we have the space," Marcus began. "No." My voice was firm. "I will not live under your roof again, dependent on your goodwill. I will have my own home, my own space, my own life. I will be grandma to Emma and Tyler, but on my schedule. You don't get to use me and then discard me when it's convenient." The words hit Marcus like a slap. Good, he needed to hear them. "Fourth, you will attend family counseling, all of us. We will work through this with a professional, or I walk away entirely." Jessica spoke for the first time, her voice hoarse. "Chantel, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I was jealous and cruel, and I convinced Marcus that my feelings mattered more than your dignity. That was wrong." I looked at her, really looked at her. She was broken in more ways than just physically. The pride that had armored her was stripped away, leaving someone vulnerable and scared. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I said honestly, "but I'm willing to try. For my grandbabies, and because despite everything, you're still family." Tears rolled down Jessica's bruised cheeks. Marcus stood up, his voice thick with emotion. "Whatever you need, Mum. Whatever you want. I'll sign anything. I'll do anything. I'm so sorry. Dad would be ashamed of me." "Yes," I said quietly. "He would be. But he'd also want you to do better. So do better, Marcus. Be the man he raised you to be." The next 3 months were the hardest of my life. I moved back into Marcus and Jessica's house, but this time everything was different. I wasn't the built-in babysitter or cook or cleaning lady. I was there with clear boundaries and a specific purpose: to help Jessica recover and ensure the children were cared for during the crisis. Jessica's recovery was brutal. The surgery had been successful, but physical therapy was agonizing. I helped her to the bathroom, helped her bathe, helped her get dressed. All the intimate, humbling tasks she'd never imagined needing her mother-in-law for. Some days she was grateful. Other days, the humiliation made her snap at me. "I don't need you to hover," she'd say through gritted teeth during PT exercises. "Then stop complaining when your leg hurts because you didn't do the exercises," I'd reply evenly. We weren't friends. We weren't even cordial most days. But slowly, grudgingly, we were learning to coexist with honesty instead of false sweetness. Marcus stepped up in ways I hadn't seen in years. He took family leave from work for 2 weeks, then worked from home as much as possible. He learned to cook basic meals, managed the kids' schedules, and attended every single counseling session without complaint. In therapy, we laid it all out. The resentment Jessica had harbored about feeling replaced, the guilt Marcus felt about his father's death, and his inability to protect me. My own failures to communicate when I'd felt the relationship shifting. "You should have talked to me," I told Jessica during one particularly raw session. "If you felt like I was overstepping, you should have said something instead of stealing from me and planning to abandon me." "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid you'd make me look like the bad guy." "You're Marcus's mother. I could never compete with that." "I never asked you to compete," I said, my voice breaking. "I just wanted to be part of the family." We cried together that day. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. Emma and Tyler adjusted better than I expected. I explained to them in simple terms that sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, but we all still love each other. Emma was old enough to sense the tension, but young enough to accept the explanation. "Are you staying, Grandma?" she asked me one night while I tucked her in. "For a little while longer, sweetheart. But then, Grandma's getting her own place nearby. Will you still come see us?" "Every week, baby, I promise." She hugged me tight. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, sweet girl. So much." True to my word, after 2.5 months, once Jessica could move around with a walker and manage basic tasks, I moved out. I'd found a beautiful 1-bedroom apartment in a senior living community 15 minutes away. Not a nursing home, but an independent living complex with activities, a community center, and neighbors my age. It had a full kitchen where I could cook when I wanted, a small balcony with a view of a garden, space that was entirely, completely mine. The day I moved in, Dorothy helped me unpack. "How does it feel?" she asked, hanging up curtains in my bedroom. "Like I can finally breathe," I said. Marcus and Jessica came by with the kids later that week. Emma and Tyler ran around, excited about Grandma's new house. Marcus looked around the apartment, and I saw something in his eyes. Understanding, maybe, or acceptance. "It's really nice, Mom," he said quietly. "You seem happy." "I am," I replied. "I'm building my own life." Finally. Jessica was still using a cane, but she was getting stronger every day. She looked around the apartment and then met my eyes. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for helping me even when I didn't deserve it." "We're family," I said. "That doesn't mean you get to treat me badly." "But it does mean I show up when it matters." She nodded, tears glistening. "The first payment went through yesterday. I set up the automatic transfer." "I saw." "Thank you. It would take 30 months for her to repay me." 30 months of accountability, but I believed she'd do it. 6 months after the accident, we gathered at Marcus and Jessica's house for Thanksgiving. It was the first major holiday since everything had fallen apart. I arrived at 2 p.m., as agreed. Not early to help with prep, Jessica and Marcus had cooked together this time. I came as a guest, with a store-bought pie and flowers for the table. Emma threw open the door. "Grandma, you're here." The house smelled like turkey and stuffing. Marcus hugged me at the door, holding on a little longer than usual. "Thanks for coming, Mum. Wouldn't miss it." Dinner was different. We weren't the same family we'd been before. That family had been built on unspoken expectations and unacknowledged resentments. This new family was being built on honesty and boundaries, and it was messier and more uncomfortable, but it was also more real. Jessica still had moments where I could see her bristle at my suggestions. I still had moments where I had to bite my tongue to keep from taking over. But we were trying. We were all trying. After dinner, Emma climbed into my lap while the adults cleaned up. "Grandma, I'm glad you have your own house, but I still miss you." "I miss you too, baby. But you know what? Now, when we see each other, it's even more special. Because I'm not here all the time. I'm here because I choose to be. Because I love you." She thought about that for a moment, then nodded. "That makes sense. Children understand more than we give them credit for." As I drove back to my apartment that night, full of turkey and surrounded by leftovers Marcus had insisted I take, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I wasn't living for anyone else anymore. I wasn't trying to earn my place in my own family. I was Chantel Morrison, not just Marcus's mom, not just Emma and Tyler's grandma, but me. A woman with her own space, her own life, her own purpose. Did I still love my family? Absolutely. Would I help them if they needed me? Of course. But never again would I sacrifice my dignity for their convenience. Never again would I accept being called a burden by people I'd given everything to. I'd learned the hardest lesson of my life, that sometimes love means letting people carry their own weight, so they understand what they had when you were carrying it for them. Jessica had called me a burden. Then life forced her to understand what a burden really felt like, and who was strong enough to help carry it anyway, not out of obligation, but out of choice. I pulled into my apartment complex, parked in my designated spot, and walked into my home, my space, my sanctuary, my new beginning. And I smiled. Because sometimes the people who call you a burden need to carry the weight themselves to understand what they lost,